what the Church of Scientology is so afraid of.
This is
SPTV. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron here with Natalie Webster from Scientology, Life After a Cult. How's it going?
Good. Aloha, everybody. I'm like thrilled to death to talk about some past life stuff.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun. For any newcomers, you can check out Natalie's YouTube channel at Scientology, Life After a Cult. Natalie, you've been kicking butt over there. Your videos are doing awesome. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Getting lots of help and some great tips from people who watch the videos. And I just super, super appreciate it because I'm just Forrest Gumping my way through it.
That's awesome. So this subject that we're going to be discussing was inspired by, I forget if it was a Q&A I was doing recently.
Anyway, you were talking to Tommy.
I was talking to Tommy and
about whether or not, Danny would drop the body.
Right. And whether anyone in Scientology has ever come back and proved that they had full recall of their previous life or not. And then someone pointed out to me that they said, well, Nora Ames, that Nora attested to last life clear. And we all know hundreds of people who in Scientology attested to having achieved the state of clear in a previous life. And it had never occurred to me that in a sense, that is a Scientologist claiming to have reincarnated and come back. And I had never thought of it that way. And also there's a particular procedure in Scientology called the Clear Certainty Rundown, the CCRD. It's a particular procedure that is done in Scientology to determine whether someone has really achieved the state of clear or not. And this procedure is done whether the state is supposed to have been achieved in this lifetime or last lifetime. That auditor course on how to deliver the CCRD is a confidential Scientology course. I never did that course. And it occurred to me that I've never really interviewed people asking them about their CCRD procedure and exactly what kind of details they were required to come up with from their previous life in order to be allowed to attest to having achieved the state of clear in a previous life. And then you said that you, while in Scientology, attested to having achieved the state of clear in your previous life. And I have to know all about it.
I will tell you. You see, what happened was I was in Seattle where I had my daughter and I was a Sea Org member there, but I was working at the Church of Scientology in Seattle because they sent me there because I refused to, my husband at the time and I refused to get an abortion. We wanted to have our child. So we're there, we have the child. I'm doing some type of auditing. I don't remember what it was. Till this point in Scientology, I had done like the purification rundown where you go in the sauna and you sweat and some other basic types of auditing, a heck of a lot of security checks, which is basically interrogations, things like that. But I didn't do on the bridge to total freedom. You will see multiple steps, one after the other, and you do each step with the goal to achieve what in Scientology is called the state of clear. And being a clear in Scientology means you no longer have your reactive mind, which in Scientology, they consider that as the part of your mind that records everything when there's pain and unconsciousness and then causes you to react in a very stimulus response way. That is, it's the big old bad reactive mind. And so you do these steps in Scientology to get rid of that reactive mind. Somebody like me, I don't know, like I didn't go in and go like, oh my gosh, I think I went clear in my last lifetime and blah, 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 blah. With me, I don't even remember I just remembered what we were doing. I was doing, it's going to come back in real time. I gotta check back on the hard drive of the brain here. I was doing a procedure in Scientology where if you're going along and things get buggy or just don't work, like I think I was on what was called the Key to Life course then, which Aaron, you told me isn't even there anymore.
Yeah, you can't do that course anymore.
Yeah, you can't do it. So I was doing some type of of auditing procedure because something had happened and it just wasn't going well. So it was in Scientology, they call that you're going to do a correction or a correction list. And in the process of doing this auditing procedure with an auditor in Seattle, she was like at the top of the bridge to total freedom. I think she was like operating Thetan level 8, and she was a trained auditor as well. I blurted out some things, which I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is related to, the state of clear. That wasn't even totally the topic. It was a question that had come up, and I had said, blah, blah, blah. And next thing I know, she's like writing stuff down. And the next thing I'm told is that my next step is to go to Los Angeles and do what is called the Clear Certainty Rundown. And that is a procedure to determine whether or not you achieve the state of clear. You'll do it even if it's in this current lifetime, but it can come up that you did it in a past lifetime, supposedly. And I kind of want to preface this by saying, I have no idea what to think about any of this today. I know what happened, and I'll share the things that that came up, whether that was just my imagination or it really happened. I honestly don't know. So I get told I got to go to Los Angeles. So of course, this is something that I had to pay for and go to do this Clear Certainty Rundown. And when you do it, I don't remember, Erin, you had asked me if they asked me for a specific name from a previous lifetime. And I don't remember that. I mean, I don't remember what I had for breakfast today. So if I did, I feel like I would have remembered that because it seems kind of like a cool thing to have remembered. But
yeah,
I don't exactly.
Well, the thing is though, and I want to throw this out there, any former Scientologist who was trained on the CCRD delivery course and would be willing to have a chat with me on my channel about the procedure, please email me at growingupinscientology@gmail.com. I've spoken to a few other people just in the last 24 hours who attested to past life clear. And it does seem that part of the procedure is asking the person for the name of who they were. Now, you would think that they're asking you for the name so that they can go verify that that was a real Scientologist. And that is not the case. Mm-hmm. That is not what they do. They just want to see if you can give a name to the best that I can figure out so far.
Yeah. And I don't recall that at all. And because, like I said, this was not a thought I was walking around I had done Scientology in a previous lifetime. And I don't know if you probably know this, Erin, because you did so much of the training. In Scientology, I'll often refer to it as reincarnation, but they don't use that term. It's past lives. Because my understanding is reincarnation is you can come back as any life form. But past lives, they're specifically talking about humans. So all you Scientologists out there who thought that your dog was coming back as your kid, and it just doesn't work that way if you're in Scientology.
And it is interesting that Scientology does not use the word reincarnation. I think perhaps it's just too loaded of a word. There's other significances associated with it from other belief systems.
Yeah, I feel like they try to lighten it, like make it like it's, it's not. In fact, even if you go on the Scientology website, talks about how past lives are not a dogma in Scientology. Like, what? Huh? Excuse me? That's like saying that Jesus is not part of Christianity.
Remember, Natalie, what's true for you is true for you. As long as what's true for you is what's true for us.
Exactly. I should not judge them. So I go to LA. I have to do this Clear Certainty Rundown. And I don't remember a ton of the questions, but I know it was like they would ask you questions and use the e-meter, which is a tool that you would hold on to these metal cans, and a small current would go through your body. This is what we're told. And that when it hits some resistance, it registers on the meter. And when you are trained in Scientology, you're trained to read what these different reactions to the needle mean or could mean. And then you dig in more on things that kind of like do certain things with the needle. If that makes sense. It's kind of I think, simple explanation of that. And what ended up happening was whatever the questions were that they were asking me, like I would see flashes of things in my head. And looking back at it today, was it me just kind of like coming up with things that would fit the scenario? Very well could have been completely. I even then I wasn't totally sure what to think about it. at that time in Scientology, I believed in that we had lived before, that there were past lives. Today, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm not sure. I'm open to a lot of things. So we're doing this and I start seeing like just kind of like more flashes of things. And so I get questioned about it and what I see. And the gist of it was, as I went through this procedure, that and I think it's hilarious because a lot of times, like I think I've heard that in just England alone at St. Hill, which is the organization that Ellen Hubbard was at, that they came across in like 3 different people who thought they were Jesus in a past life. And none of mine was ever like that. It was just usually I was just some idiot doing some idiot thing.
No one ever wants to say that they were Judas. Everybody wants to be Jesus.
Everybody wants to be Jesus. I know. So we're going through this and what's coming up and I'm going to call it a memory because I'm going to tell the story like at that time. This was my point of view. So this memory comes up of a woman and I can see her and that's determined that that's me. And she's doing services at St. Hill in England. And back then there was, it was called the St. Hill Special Briefing Course or the clearing course that people would do. And then they would get to this state of clear. And, the state of clear again, you're supposed to not have your reactive mind and just, you're supposed to be better all the way around. Did you ever read, Aaron, how Scientology describes it like on their website for the state of clear?
No.
I'm just going to read it quick. It says it clears the name of a state achieved through auditing and describes a being who no longer has his own reactive mind, the hidden source of irrational behavior, unreasonable fears, upsets, and insecurities. Without a reactive mind, individuals regain their basic personality, self-determinism, and in essence, become much more themselves. I did achieve that after I left Scientology. Every day I become more and more myself. So we're doing this, and the memory that's coming up that we're working with is that in a past life that I was this woman doing Scientology services in England and had achieved the state of clear. The other interesting part to that is it didn't just stop there. My memory that we were working with, and again, I'm not saying today that I believe this. This is what happened at the time, was that I was then taken by my family who were against Scientology and put under psychiatric care, which again is something that Scientologists will not admit to. Because again, it's like everybody, when they remember their past lives, it's just, oh, they're just so amazing. Not so much the case with what I was going through. And that is how I'd kind of like then gotten out of Scientology, but went back into Scientology, trying to do more Scientology, but was kind of like reporting back to like I was under the grips of the psychiatrist, the dangerous, dangerous psychiatrist.
And this is the story that you came up with of your previous life, that you ended up spying on Scientology for the psychs?
Yes. And somehow they let me go up the bridge to total freedom. I mean, obviously today they're kicking themselves. Like, I can't believe we let that bitch on our confidential levels.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was like my recall, what was coming up in this auditing of, and by the way, guys, we don't talk about these things in Scientology in detail. So you never get to hear somebody else's story. You're not supposed to. It doesn't stop some Scientologists from walking around being all like, yeah, it was Jesus in a past life and things like that. That sometimes still happens. So you're not allowed to discuss what comes up for you in these auditing sessions. So there's no verification. I didn't know how many people thought that, they were Jesus or other famous figures till I left Scientology. I'd hear rumors here and there, but not to the level that it actually was. So in going through this procedure, you also go over, and again, I don't remember, hopefully somebody can explain the actual procedure because I don't remember it exactly. But you basically go over they're basically asking you in Scientology, there's a thing called the clear cognition or realization. It's something that you realize, and that means you have achieved the state of clear. And spoiler alert, for those of you who might still be doing Scientology and under the radar, I'm going to tell you what it is. in Scientology, when you realize, when you've done enough of this auditing, that you are the one creating your reactive mind, and now you've decided you're no longer to do that, you've achieved the state of clear. It's called a clear cognition. And even when you're doing it, like I didn't know I supposedly went clear and did even like upper levels in Scientology. And I didn't know what the clear cognition was because I didn't know that what I said was that. And that's how they were like, yes, you have achieved the state of clear. You may move on right after you pay more money.
Well, and that's why I say that the clear cognition is an even more carefully guarded confidential secret in Scientology than even Xenu and the body thetans, because thousands and thousands and thousands of people have gone OT3 or above. And everyone who's done those levels knows the Xenu story. And all of those people have attested to the state of clear. But no one who attests to clear is told what the magical words were that they had to say. So just because you go clear, just because you attest to clear, doesn't mean you know the clear cognition. You might, your auditor and the case supervisor who supervises the auditing have determined that in your auditing, you have said the clear cognition, but they don't tell you what that was. So the only people in Scientology who know what the clear cognition are the auditors who have been trained on the Clear Certainty Rundown Auditor course. And that's not a lot of people. That's maybe a few hundred people. And by the way, there's about 150 Scientology organizations in the world. Most of those organizations do not have a staff member who has been trained on how to deliver the Clear Certainty Rundown. I swear to God, if there's 300 people in Scientology, well, in the service org level, if there's 300 people in the entire world at the service org level who know the clear cog, I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
And yet there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people who know the Xenu body thetan stuff. So that's why these people who are doing the First Amendment auditor stuff, William Good, Jessica Palma-Dessa, others, I feel like what would really freak out the Scientology security guards, even more than talking about the OT levels, would be telling them the clear cognition. If William or Jessica stood by the bus line where all the Sea Org members get onto the bus and is just telling everyone the clear cognition, the security guards would absolutely lose their minds.
Or held up a sign that says you create your own reactive mind.
Yes.
AKA clear cognition. Because you're right. You don't know. I didn't know until I had left Scientology. And now knowing what I know today about it and the eyes I have today when I look back on it, and I'm like, oh, I totally said that. And it was a realization that I had, but it was more because at that time as a Scientologist, I believed that I had a reactive mind, which is something that records these times of pain and unconsciousness and causes me to act in a way that's very stimulus response, as they call it, being irrational and whatnot. And I did have a realization that seems like something I'm doing, like I'm making it up. Like I'm deciding, like how I would describe it today. It's like if you just realize that, hey, I'm deciding how I'm going to show up for stuff. And I'm deciding how I'm going to react to it. And I'm deciding if I'm going to be a total bitch about something, I'm going to be a bitch, but I'm deciding I'm going to be a bitch. I'm doing it. I'm creating these things. And I think that is the gist of what I was talking about when I was in Seattle, and be like, wow, you know what? Now that I think about it, it just really seems like I'm creating this, like these responses and the way that a reactive mind works. So it's kind of like, if you know anything about cognitive behavioral therapy and some of the reframing that you do, and realizing that you have much more power over how you want your life to be than you might think you do, because of the thoughts and things that you have. If you were going down the rabbit hole of these really negative thoughts or creating more negative thoughts, then that becomes your reality. And that was pretty much the realization that I had, but using Scientology terminology. So then during this clear certainty rundown, which is to verify this state, verify and validate, that's what's came up. But like I said, it blew my mind too, that I didn't get kicked out then and there or declared a suppressive person because of what I was saying that I did in an earlier lifetime against Scientology, that I was like going back to the psychiatrist who had gotten a hold of me and pretending to be, and being like a spy for them. And, but the other thing about in Scientology is no auditor, no one in Scientology is ever going to tell you that didn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
No, you're not Jesus. No, that's just not going to happen. That's what's called in Scientology an evaluation. They will tell you a ton of other stuff about yourself. They will tell you how stupid you are, what an idiot you are, and all these other things, but you can believe as much as you want about who you were in these previous lifetimes.
That's right.
But they'll never tell you that.
That's right. By the way, I wanted to add, one of the reasons I think there's value in telling all these Sea Org members the clear cognition isn't that it's going to make them all like, melt into a puddle.
Mm.
It's the disappointment. So like, it's the same thing like what I've said about finding out that the OT3 stuff was just Xenu and the body thetans. It's not that to a Scientologist, learning about Xenu and the body thetans would be like so crazy. It's that it's such a disappointment that you've been told your entire life that these levels are so mysterious and powerful and like unbelievable. And you're like, what? Xenu and the body thetans, huh? Okay. So if I was a Sea Org member, when I used to think that the clear cognition was some magical, like mysterious thing. And when I was in the Sea Org, if I had found out that the clear cognition was something as stupid as I just realized I've been creating my own reactive mind all along and I'm not doing it anymore, I would have been, there would have been a part of me that was like, oh, this is all bullshit, isn't it? Oh, this whole bridge to total freedom is bullshit, isn't it? That's the clear cognition. Are you shitting me? Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I swear to God, William Good, if you're watching, Jessica Palmadessa, you guys have to start telling the Sea Org members the clear cognition. I think it's going to really up the game.
It absolutely will. And it makes sense to me today why they don't point it out to you. One, they don't want you telling people. Secondly, it creates more mystery around it. But really, I think it's more because they don't want you telling people. Because you would, and I think the reason, my take on why more people know about the upper confidential levels, about Xenu and body thetans, but don't know about this clear cognition, which is a realization, is because there are more people who I think the state of clear is achievable. So from a marketing standpoint, you're really holding out those secrets and creating that desire and want for the product that you can sell the most of. And that is what I think, because they lead you to believe that even just by using the book Dianetics and the procedures in it, that you could achieve the state of clear just with that. So you're buying this book. It's kind of like this bait and switch that they often do, where it's, you know what? You could achieve all kinds of things using Dianetics and just Dianetics and blah, 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 blah. Then it's like, oh, you know what? So it turns out Dianetics is not enough. So we have all these other things for you to do as well that are just going to cost more money and take more time and give us more reason to interrogate you. It just goes on. And Erin, you were saying too, like with the upper levels, the higher up that you go, I still need to read some of like I did through operating Thetan level 4, but I want to read the higher up ones. But my understanding is like each step you go, it's like, oh, like on operating Thetan level 3, we got rid of like, oh, I don't have any more of these pesky body Thetans, right? Just like, ooh, got them all off me. And I'm fine now. And then you do the next level only to find out, oh yeah, you do. And then the more you do, it comes out more and more that I think in the end, it's like you made all that up too. Isn't that the operating Thetan level 8 kind of thing?
It's not that you made up the body Thetans. It's that they go through your past life memories that you've come up with in your auditing. Yeah. And they basically assess whether those memories belong to you or a body Thetan or a Thetan cluster. And so, and if I'm misstating any of this, please email me at growingupinscientology@gmail.com, because sometimes I get the OT3 procedure mixed up with the OT5 procedure mixed up with some of the things on OT8. But yeah, so you basically are told that all of these past life recalls that you've had, which have created for you an identity of who you think you have been over the last millions and billions and trillions of years, you're told, oh, those weren't your memories. Those memories belong to the body Thetans. Now that you know who you are not, the good news is now you're ready to find out who you really are. Except, spoiler alert, there's no more OT levels.
Yeah, exactly. So you go through all of that, and it's like in the end, it's
And your next step is TRs and objectives.
exactly. They drop you to the bottom of the bridge to total freedom. Once you get to the top, you go back to the bottom. At least that's how it became under David Miscavige.
Right.
So I did that, got it validated, went back to my organization and thought, well, okay, I looked at it like this. I just saved a bunch of money because now I don't need to do these other levels if I'm already now just, kind of got pushed to the front of the line there. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And then later on did my steps to do the actual upper levels in Scientology. And when you're auditing in Scientology, this is something too that Scientology tries to say that, oh, they really try to downplay, I think, the whole past lives thing and what they call the whole track, your all existence of eternity and time that you spent. Like we were all racing around in spaceships in different lives. And I think it's interesting how they try to downplay that, yet it's on everyday lectures with L. Ron Hubbard. Oh my God, you know what would be funny, Aaron? We should go through the history of man.
The book?
There is a book called The History of Man in Scientology. And L. Ron Hubbard comes up with these incidents that he said happened just, hundreds of thousands of millions of years ago. And some of them are like, honestly, it would make a good sci-fi movie. It really would. His science fiction side really came out in that book and it just shined. But it's very much, that would be hilarious because I think people don't know about that. I think we should definitely do that. And that would be.
We'll have to get some new copy. I guess even if we had an old copy, it wouldn't matter. If any, because I don't have a copy of History of Man, and I wonder if we can even find a copy online, actually. But if anyone's out there, and you got a copy of History of, do you have a copy, Natalie?
I don't have any Scientology books anymore. There is a guy, there's some things on, you ever hear of the book, The Mind Benders, Scientology?
No.
Cyril Vosper wrote it in the early 70s. And he was this is my understanding, the first person to write a book as an ex-Scientologist about Scientology. And I did not read the entire book, but I think in the book, he talks about some of these things in A History of Man. So it might be in there too, but I know it's on the internet. If you look those things up, The Mind Benders, Scientology, Cyril Vosper. Because I remember finding some stuff about it. But when you're going through these past life things in Scientology, regardless, because even in Dianetics, which is the beginning step in Scientology, if you go into one of those test centers where they want you to buy a book and they want you to watch films, one of the first things they might have you do is an introductory Dianetic session. And when you're using Dianetics auditing, you're looking for like, an incident. So say you got hit by a car and you're being run through that incident. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell to lessen the energy and the upset around it? And this is what the book Dianetics talks about. But then you ask, if it's not really resolving, you ask for an earlier similar time that happened where you were hit by a car. So almost anything you do in Scientology auditing, they will go for and ask you for an earlier similar time that happened. So maybe you had 2 earlier similar times that you got hit by a car. It is not limited to this lifetime. So if you're asked in an auditing session, tell me about an earlier similar time that you were hit by a car. And you're like, oh, and you start seeing this vision of maybe you got hit by a spaceship, right? Not a car, but a spaceship. And you go, well, you know what? I'm seeing that I got hit by a spaceship. And they will run the procedure. Scientology auditing involves very exact steps. They will do the same steps with you, whether you're talking about getting hit by a car last week or hit by a spaceship however long ago. They will run you through that and get the details of it and never question the validity. And you can do that anywhere, even early in Scientology. It's not limited just to the upper levels, which is why I think it's hilarious that they downplay it, because L. Ron Hubbard has multiple lectures where he's talking about this stuff, not to mention in A History of Man and other books as well. Do you want to get into the like OT3 stuff?
I think so. Let Let me see if there's anything else about the, okay. So your experience doing the clear certainty rundown
Yeah.
and attesting to last life clear.
Yeah.
Okay. So you gave all these details to your auditor about, having achieved the state of clear and then basically being kidnapped and turned to be a double agent for the psychs, basically, right?
Yeah. And they still
Did,
let me in.
did you have to come up with details about the actual auditing and where it was and when it was and who did it? And I think you said you don't remember having to give what your name was. Isn't it funny that in an auditing session, the auditor is sitting here and getting all sorts of crazy details from you about having been a double agent for the psychs, but wouldn't want to know what your name was?
Yeah. And they could have, it's sometimes when you don't have what they say in Scientology, if you don't recall it, right? If you don't remember, they have different ways of trying to get at it. So they'll ask you the same question, but in different ways to try and ask you things to try and help you recall what that was. And I do remember, I do remember being asked about it because even in my head now, I can see in Scientology, everybody has a folder. It's a legal size folder and it's called your auditing folder or your pre-clear folder. It's got your name on it. And then it has all these like one of however many there are, because you end up with a ton of these if you do a ton of auditing in Scientology. And I do remember saying that I could see the pre-clear folder. So it could be I gave a name and then I just forgot it because I don't know, a lot of that wasn't the meat and potatoes for me. I was like, okay, that's great and all, but I need to know how this is going to help me today, not be so freaking miserable. And of course, that was not exactly their goal. I achieved that goal after I left Scientology. So they're taking you back to kind of recall this. So it did come up. I just can't remember if I actually came up with a name. And maybe there's a procedure, if they don't come up with a name, then this. The main thing they're looking for is this realization about that you created your own reactive mind and you're not going to do it anymore. That's the main thing.
And I'm going to keep asking different people about this as I do interviews with people who've done CCRDs for past life clear. But I don't know why I'm so stuck on this point of the fact that they will ask you for a name. And even if they have no record whatsoever of anyone with that name, they will still attest you to being a last life clear. There's not any homework being done to verify these past life recalls. And so the goal isn't to prove that these recalls are correct. It's hard for me to actually even articulate what the goal is. Like, if you're not interested in it being a real thing, if you're not interested in whether this really occurred, it sort of implies that the state itself isn't real. Because in order for the state to be real, your recollections of having achieved that state would have to be real. And in order for those recollections to be real, you'd have to be able to verify it. Asking someone for their name seems to be the easiest thing. Scientology keeps records of everyone who's ever walked in their front doors, and they never get rid of any records. So, but do you see where I'm going with this? It's like for Scientology and for Scientology auditors and case supervisors to not have any interest whatsoever in verifying these names. If you think about it deeply enough, you realize it sort of implies that the entire subject is bullshit.
Yeah. Because if they have to prove it with each person, how many times would they not be able to prove it?
Yeah. And I have to say that I think some of these contradictions has something to do with why David Miscavige completely outlawed the practice of allowing anybody to attest to last life clear.
What? When did that happen?
This happened around 2000. The earliest I can recall it is about 2002, 2003. Not only were people not allowed to attest to last life clear, anyone who had attested to last life clear was told they were not clear.
I want my money back. Which is so dumb because it's like, if you had that realization, right? Because I think that in Scientology, again, it's called the clear cognition, that you've created your own reactive mind and you're not going to do it anymore. That there's some validity in that, not of the reactive mind, but for me, it was in realizing that I was much more in the driver's seat of myself than I thought I was. And I think that that's a realization that many people have outside of Scientology by maybe reading a book or by going to therapy or just through a host of different things. Because when you recognize that, it is easier to like go, oh, okay, then, I have more of a choice in the matter, right? It just blew my mind. And that's why they don't share it, because they need to keep it secret. And I think, like I was saying, more people are going for the state of clear than they are the upper confidential levels. Because there are people, especially look at like the Nation of Islam, and they're tied to Scientology. Back in my day, I don't know if it changed, but they were primarily sticking with Dianetics and just sticking with auditing each other on Dianetics, where it can come up that you go earlier similar, as they call it, an earlier similar time that this happened. And that I'm curious, like, I wonder, like, did they just stick to this lifetime? Because they don't push you either. It's not where it has to be a previous lifetime, unless you get to where, you're at birth already and they're looking for an earlier similar time. And based on the reaction of the needle of the meter that you're holding the cans to, if it's reacting a certain way, they're going to want to dig into that more and see if they can help you recall what that is.
But think about this. This is interesting, and I'm not sure I've actually thought about this much before. If the Nation of Islam folks were just doing book one Dianetics auditing, which we know that's what they were doing, because they were co-auditing, they were doing a co-audit program. They were not doing New Era Dianetics. They were doing book one. Book one doesn't even bring up the possibility of past lives.
That's
book
true.
one says that the prenatal incidence, conception is basically the earliest, or birth is basically the earliest engram that you can have. So it's actually not possible to go past life on book one auditing, unless there's anyone in the live chat who has a different experience with this, or they have insight on how the Nation of Islam folks were being handled. Technically, if you're doing the book one procedure, you cannot go past life.
If you're doing the procedure, you cannot go past life, as in you're not allowed to?
It wouldn't be possible to, because book one doesn't talk about thetans or past lives. It doesn't. It just talks, and it says that the most basic engram that you can have is birth, or maybe prenatal stuff. But if you just read Dianetics, past lives aren't even a possibility. It's not until Scientology that I get into that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it does make me wonder what the Nation of Islam folks were doing, how they were being coached.
Maybe they were just doing things within this lifetime, right? These painful incidents, and they were running through those. Hard to say. I would like to see some people from the Nation of Islam coming forward and sharing their stories. Hit a girl up. I will talk to you.
Okay, so where were we at on this? We were talking about, just the fact that the CCRD procedure itself sort of implies that the state of clear is bullshit, if you ask me. I mean, I never had any questions about it being bullshit or not. I know it's bullshit, but it didn't occur to me that the CCRD procedure itself kind of implies that even Scientology thinks the state is bullshit. I mean, just the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah. And I think it's a very convenient out to not. So, okay, if you give a name of a past life in Scientology, that it's not verified, how hard would it be? All of these folders were kept track of. And it's not like there were some ridiculous number of Scientologists where you couldn't have done it as a data entry project and get it all on a spreadsheet and be able to pull these names up. But it would invalidate that was the thing. And that's one thing in Scientology, is they don't invalidate like what you recall to be true in terms of past lives and things like that. But when you go ahead.
I remembered where we were at. I was talking about people being told they were not really clear. This was happening to people even who had finished upper OT levels. So somebody would go to flag, they would finish OT7, they would attest to finishing OT7. They would be told, congratulations, you finished OT7. By the way, we have bad news, you're not clear. And then they would be made to do some more Dianetics auditing, then attest to clear again, and then be allowed on to OT8. Like,
that's right.
Even in Scientology world, this makes no sense. And yet this is what Miscavige had done with everyone. Yeah. And this is yet another example that I'm going to give. Sometimes you'll hear people say nothing in Scientology can ever change. It can never change. It can never change. Miscavige changes it all the time.
Yeah, he does. And it's very much done It's such a moneymaker. That's what's so obvious about it. It's such a moneymaker because if David Miscavige says like, hey, turns out nobody really achieved this state, you need to go back and do it. And people just listen and believe it and pay for it. They're often pissed off about it. They're not happy about it because how is this? Why do I have to pay full price to get something you told me I already got? I mean, what scenario in the real world does that work? But because he's got people just bent over a barrel with this idea of you cannot disagree and this narrative that he discovered where there were errors that other people inserted into L. Ron Hubbard's technology and policies. And that's why you have to repurchase all of these books. It's just all part of the money-making scam because he knows there are no upper levels beyond operating Thetan level 8. L. Ron Hubbard just never got around to it. And they were promised. It's the whole carrot. It's all about having this carrot in Scientology that you're chasing. You're constantly chasing this carrot of your next step or your next level. And then I'm finally going to be able to deal with XYZ. I'm finally going to be happy if I do this next step. That's how they keep you going with it, that you just need to do that next step and the next step and the next step. And it just goes on and creates this idea that you can never be content or happy where you are, like in the state that you're in, whatever that is. It doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement. It just means that, hey, maybe I'm like kind of cool and chill where I am right now, and I'm not super stressed out about stuff. That is a state that's not even, they will rub your nose into something and gaslight you into being incredibly upset about something. They have a whole procedure where they call it finding your ruin, or finding out what is ruining your life from your perspective, and then telling you how Scientology can handle that. And that's what they do with the personality test. Oh, look at this. Your communication is very low. How is that affecting your life? Oh, well, I'm really shy. I can't talk to women. So I haven't had a girlfriend in 5 years and I'm very upset about it. Oh, well, some Scientology can help you with that. All about making the money, making the money, making the money.
Yeah. So what's your recollection of OT3? When you started OT3, that's where you learned about Xenu and the body thetans. Did you struggle with finding out that was the magical material?
No, I mean, it wasn't that bizarre to me. Like, I didn't read it. You read about Xenu and the Galactic Confederation, and there are 76 planets around these other stars, and you can see them from here, although I never really looked. And that all these years ago, what was it? I always forget now. Is it 75 billion years ago? 200.
The volcano incident, I believe, was 76 million years ago.
Something like that. I had it right here. So
75 million years ago, something like that.
Yeah. So it says, and what's interesting is when you're learning it, when you're in the course room, because you have to get this pack. And Aaron, you worked at the advanced organization. So you remember, you take the pack down with your confidential materials and you unplug it and you run over to your table and you put it down and you plug it back in so you don't set off alarms, because it's that confidential. You can't have people reading this stuff and getting pneumonia and dying.
So I worked at the advanced org, but I had never done the OT levels. So I was never allowed into the OT course rooms. I've never even seen those course rooms or those bookshelves or those tables or anything.
Yeah. You're not allowed in there unless you've done it or you're doing it and you're working on it. So on this operating Thetan level 3, the material that you're introduced, it's okay to read it, right? I mean, like the part of the OT3
here in the video?
Stuff. Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, okay. Just want to make sure. Spoiler alert, if you have not done operating Thetan level 3. So you learn, and when you read it, it's written in L. Ron Hubbard's handwriting. So you have to read the document that you read. I think it's red ink on white, but it's in his handwriting. I don't remember that it was black and white, but I could be remembering it wrong. And some parts were kind of hard to make out it too. But basically, it goes like this, children. Gather round. The head of the Galactic Confederation, 76 planets around larger stars visible from here, founded 95 million years ago, very space opera, solved overpopulation, 250 billion or so per planet. That does sound like a lot of people. $178 billion on average. And they were going to, so Xenu, right? He caused people to be brought to Earth and put an H bomb on the principal volcanoes. And this is the incident that Aaron's talking about in regard to the volcanoes. So he puts them in these volcanoes with an H bomb in certain volcanoes. And then the Pacific area ones were taken in boxes to Hawaii and the Atlantic area. One's to Las Palmas, which I think is another volcano. And they're packaged. His name was Xenu. He used renegades, various misleading data by means of circuits, etc. So they did what they call these, and maybe Aaron, you could fill this in better because you did the training side of the bridge to total freedom. It's the implants. So in this, L. Ron Hubbard talks about taking the Xenu took all these people because there were just too much people. And he was just like, no, this is too much people. We need to do something about this. And one day he's like, why don't I take them to Earth? I'm going to throw them in volcanoes and blow them up with a hydrogen bomb. That just sounds like that's fire, right? But as part of that, he then did what's called implanting them. I think you can explain that maybe better than I can, Aaron.
I describe implanting as just electronically programming a being to either believe something or to do something without their knowledge that that is what has occurred. So they believe something, but they don't know that they've been programmed to believe that, or they're doing something compulsively, outside of their own determinism, but they don't even realize it's outside of their determinism. They think it's their own determinism.
Yeah, and they think that it's them. So this is what L. Ron Hubbard was saying is wrong with people, with humans on Earth, because these body thetans of these people who were killed then attached to humans. He also talks about went through with his crime. So when Xenu was done doing this, because there were some people that were not down with this. They're like, we're not down with Xenu doing this stuff. And when he was through with this crime, loyal officers, and in different parts of Scientology, you'll hear that term, especially in the Sea organization, loyal officers to the people. So these are people who were loyal to the people, but they were called loyal officers, like that was their title. So they weren't down with Xenu. So what they did is they captured him after a 6-year battle. So they battled with this dude for 6 years. They catch him. They put him in an electronic mountain trap where he still is to this day.
I didn't realize he described all that in the OT3 materials.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I must have forgotten that. Okay, so but I have this idea, and I don't know where I got the idea from, that the electronic prison that Xenu is supposed to be held in with like an eternal battery or something, keeping the prison charged, is like supposed to be somewhere in the Himalayan mountains. Does it say that in the OT3 material?
I don't recall if it said exactly where. I mean, and we could look up the rest of the OT3 materials. It's just that one section that I looked up. Because you got to wonder, like, where is this, right? Because even though it's like, okay, it just sounds nutty, but stranger things have happened. How cool would it be to like go on, Xenu search for Safari? What are you doing? I'm looking for Xenu. Have you seen Xenu?
Bear Grylls, hunt for Xenu.
Naked and Afraid, Xenu edition. But that's kind of the thing. And the thing about operating Thetan level 3, from that level on, you're dealing with this incident of these people being put in these volcanoes. So when you locate these body Thetans, and when you're doing the upper confidential levels in Scientology, you're doing them solo. So you are now not working with an auditor. You are the auditor. You are trained to work the e-meter. You're trained to hold the cans. They attach together so you can hold them in one hand. I would hold them in this hand because I'm left-handed. And then you would write your notes for your session and what was coming up and the needle reactions and all of that. But the way that you would address this problem of the body Thetans is by locating them on your body. And then you audit the body Thetan. So you find them, you pick one out, and then you audit them by running them through this incident, which was this whole story. I don't remember it exactly, but it involved basically like chariots and what do you call the babies with
Little
wings? Cherubs.
cherubs
Yeah. It involved
and
cherubs
trumpets and a
and
loud snapping
trumpets.
noise.
Yes, and a loud snapping noise. Bah! That's always how I heard it in my head. So you run. So think about it like in Dianetics, where you got hit by a car, and then they're like, okay, well, what do you see? Because you talk about it like as if it's athlete. You're happening, you're in that moment. What do you hear? All of those senses you're tapping into. It's similar, but you're running the body thing that you located through this incident that happened. And by doing so, the body thetan is like, oh, I'm free. And they can go off and do whatever, come back, do what, I mean, I don't know what they do, but do whatever. And you're freeing these body thetans now who are people just like you and I are. They're the spirits of people who were thrown in the volcanoes. And if you read, and I think it's in A History of Man, and Aaron, you can correct me if I get it wrong. Wasn't there too, it's a belief in Scientology that there are spirits being put in boxes and still like delivered to earth and dropped in oceans in ice, frozen in ice and dropped into the ocean. And that's how more and more spirits, more and more spirits are coming here. A lot of this, I love sci-fi, which is probably why I lasted as long as I did in Scientology. I mean, it would really make a great movie.
So that's why Relatable Reese, her dad told her that the reason she was always cold is because she'd spent like a few million years bobbing around the ocean in an ice cube.
Oh my gosh. That's like so against the rules in Scientology. You're not supposed to evaluate unless you're telling somebody what a dumbass they are. You're allowed to do that, but you can't tell them that this is your incident or this is what happened to you in a past life, but they do it all the time.
I got a question. When you were on OT3, were you under the impression that every body thetan you released or cleared would pick up a body and grow up to be a Scientologist?
No. I don't know if that's something. I could see how a lot of Scientologists would go there, that would be their hope. They're going to pick up a body and they're going to become a Scientologist and it's just going to be great. I did not think that. I was more of the mind of like, do what you're going to do. You do you, I'm going to do me.
Well, because people who are auditing on OT7, which is, to oversimplify it, just a continuation of what you're doing on OT3, just clearing more body thetans.
Oh my God.
They're told that that's how they're helping to clear Earth, clear the planet. And I guess I just always equate someone who's clear with being a Scientologist. But now that I think about it, I guess a Scientologist could convince themselves that they're clearing that thetan goes and picks up a body, and they just grow up as a clear, whether they join Scientology or not, they are an unaberrated person, and therefore they're helping to clear the planet, I guess is how a Scientologist might think about it. But it'd be hard to imagine a clear being, if we're talking about what Scientologists believe, a clear being not getting into Scientology. How would a Scientologist explain that? I don't even know.
Well, I guess they'd have no way of knowing, right? Because it's not like enough time has passed that some of these body thetans would have grown up already, right? Yet I've not heard of, even with people leaving Scientology, that, so turns out I was a body thetan.
That's right. No one ever has past life recall of having been a body thetan. Yeah, I was one of L. Ron Hubbard's BTs.
Sounds like a boy band, L. Ron Hubbard and the BTs.
I'm the pesky BT that LRH couldn't get rid of until he died.
I'm the one that made him take those drugs in the end.
I wonder if a BT can be an SP.
Yes. I believe that they can. I remember having an understanding of that. But you still, the way you get rid of them is you run them all through the same incident. And sometimes you would locate, like, if they had an upset, you would have to address the upset, but with a very specific formula. It would have been so much more fun in Scientology on these upper levels if you were allowed to just freeball it, right? And be like, okay, let's find some body thetans. All right, what's your deal? What's your name? Why are you here? Like, have an actual conversation. Because if you believe that these body thetans exist, why not communicate with them like a human being instead of this whole very robotic? And that's everything in Scientology. The processes are very much a one size fit all. And you do step A and step B and step C, and you respond in the same way over and over and over again. And all Scientology training is to train you to do these procedures exactly the same without variation. Whereas if we were allowed to just do whatever, I think that would have been more fun and maybe more effective too.
Yeah. I have been told by someone who did their OT levels that they had to go get review auditing because one of their body thetans wouldn't disappear.
Sure.
And as a part of the review procedure, like they had to audit the body thetan on the lower grades.
That sucks. I wonder who
Yes.
had to pay for that. Obviously not
And
the
now
body
it's
Satan.
that's right. And now it's Anon just literally said the exact same thing. I know about someone who paid for grades 0 to 4 for a single body thetan. That is unbelievable. It's now occurring to me that every Scientology celebrity who's done the OT levels has tons of blown BTs who are should have reincarnated. There's thousands of people growing up who were John Travolta's body thetans.
Mm-hmm.
We need to hear from Tom Cruise's body thetans. Their stories need to be told.
They need to be heard. They need to be acknowledged. They need to be seen. We could do that. We could advocate for Tom Cruise's body thetans. We'll just invite them over. Leave Tom Cruise and come to SPTV. Join us.
They need to
We
unionize.
accept
They need to organize. They have rights, goddammit.
Exactly. We accept body thetans. We let you be who you are. You can just be yourself. Leave or don't leave, whatever.
Oh my goodness. I like this comment. My upset is having to listen to this kind of whatever sober.
Imagine doing it sober, like being involved, like doing the actual auditing process, because you're not allowed to have any alcohol within 24 hours of doing Scientology auditing or doing a Scientology course within 24 hours, which is why Scientologists who are active Scientologists tend to not be big drinkers because there's just no opportunity. Unlike Danny Masterson, who had plenty of time.
That's right. He did have a lot of opportunity. Okay, so how long did you have to do this OT3 procedure auditing on yourself?
Ooh, I think it was 12 weeks, but that might have included the like the studying for it. Because what you would do is you march your butt over to the Advanced Organization of Los Angeles, where Aaron was working, and you got your little briefcase and it's strapped to your wrist, because when they put your pre-clear folder into that briefcase with your confidential materials, it has to be locked and then attached to your wrist, because they think that you're all stupid and might just leave it somewhere. And when you think about it, if this was being done for security, we're going to lock it in a case and we're going to attach it to people. Why call it out? Why are you making it so obvious with these freaking metal cases? And they're usually metallic and shiny. You can see them a mile away. You know, if somebody is attached like a leash to that briefcase, that there's confidential materials in it. Why not just use a regular briefcase and not look like a total idiot walking around calling it out that it's there? To me, that creates more of a security issue. It's like leaving diamond necklaces in the window after you close the store. You put them away. You're not trying to like be all obvious about it.
That's a good point. And also, what's in those briefcases is so small that couldn't you just do one of those little pouches that's like strapped to your body? Like honestly, it's just papers, right?
Well, it's the isn't there a folding like a?
Is it called a platen?
Oh wait, no, they don't let you take the platen out because you that's why you have to memorize the procedure.
Oh. If
I remember correctly, you have lists like correction lists and things that you can do if you get into trouble. But yeah, it does. I don't think you take the platen with you.
Yeah, they should make OT fanny packs so that people don't have to walk around with briefcases handcuffed to themselves.
Yeah, it has to be, everything is letter size in Scientology. So it would have to be large enough, but you could probably
legal size. Legal
size. You're right. Like I've not even, since leaving Scientology, I've not really run into any people using legal size paper. Is it still a thing?
I don't know. I don't even know.
Maybe it's just for legal stuff. I don't know. But even that I've gotten
Okay,
on
so
regular size paper.
okay, so 12 weeks. How long would the study like if it was 12 weeks from beginning to end, including the study portion? How many of those weeks do you estimate might have been the study portion?
I think just a couple of weeks from what I remember, but it includes time where you go and you do your Scientology auditing, you work on getting ready your body thetans, but every single day you turn those materials back in, and then a person called a case supervisor goes through and looks at it and makes sure that you're doing it right. And then you might have to do some type of correction because maybe you did something wrong. So you have to go back into the course room and re-practice, relearn whatever it is that you did incorrectly. So it includes all that time too. But I remember taking about 12 weeks, and the study part was weeks.
If you're auditing yourself in a room by yourself and you're keeping your own worksheets, how are they able to tell if you did something wrong?
If you're auditing by yourself and you're keeping your own worksheets, if you don't correctly note down, like the meter does this thing called like a floating needle. If you don't properly, mark that, but I don't know how they would know. It's mostly self-correction. Like, when you mess up. And if you're not slick on writing things down, you could definitely, you can't like be crossing stuff out all over the place and go, I'm just going to do it over. Like it's kind of obvious that you made that mistake, especially if you're going down a list of things. Like say you're trying to determine what your favorite food is. So you might have a list of sushi, barbecue. Not that that's what you're doing, but kind of the same idea.
Okay. Okay. Was there any, so you weren't, were you really you weren't particularly turned off by what you found on what you found out starting OT3?
No, I mean, honestly, I thought it was kind of entertaining. What I didn't like was the hours of having to be body thetan hunting and do this. That was something that was just like that, at first you're like, oh, this is interesting. Let's see if they're really there.
I love BT hunters, body
Yeah,
thetan
BT
hunters. That'd be a
hunters.
great TV show.
It would. But doing it over and over again and for hours and hours and just that's what I mean by like I felt doing the upper levels in Scientology was kind of painful because you just want to get through it. The relief of finishing that level, and it's a really big deal for people when they finish, is not so much because what you get out of it, it's because you don't have to do it anymore. You're relieved. And you're so relieved and you don't want to go back and do it that you make sure you write an incredible success story to just make sure you're constantly having to come up with what is the realization I'm supposed to have on this level so I can make it stop. Because some things are like, oh, this is kind of cool. This isn't so bad. But the repetitiveness of it gets really old. And then you're just trying to figure out like, okay, what are the magic words? What's the realization here? So I don't have to do this anymore because I want to go home. Because the people doing these levels, some of them might live there, but a ton of them travel to Florida, to the base in Clearwater, or where Aaron used to work in Los Angeles to do these levels. So you're away from your family, your job, everything for months on end. 3 months if you're lucky.
Something just occurred to me for that I hadn't considered before. Sometimes I'll question how anybody could finish OT8, the entire bridge that Scientology has to offer. Find out for themselves that this is all bullshit. There's no such thing as full OT. How could they continue to stay in Scientology after that point? And it just occurred to me that maybe what's going through their head is, why would I leave now after I've already paid and finished this stuff, even if it's all bullshit? Like, why would I leave now when I no longer have to do anything? Now, the truth is, even those people are required to keep doing things. So I'm trying to, I guess, just be a little bit of a devil's advocate. If you were going to leave, maybe the time to leave is, before you start your OT levels, but after you finish them, maybe you're like, yeah, why would I leave now? I've already done all the stuff I have to do. Leaving now would be pointless.
Well, but then they start you over on things, and that's where the scam continues, because you think that every time you think you make it to some pinnacle, what starts is the what have you done for us lately? Because now that you are operating Thetan level 8, you should be taking on more responsibility. You should be joining up as a staff member. You should be becoming a member of the C organization. You should be working full time as a person who gets other people onto into Scientology. There's always another ask, and it's usually, it has to do with your time or your money. But you make a really good point, Erin, because there are Scientologists where that's very hard to accept, that it is all BS, because you've invested so much time and money that I think for many, they need time to mourn the loss. It's like getting out of a bad marriage. You're not happy. You don't want to be there. You're both kind of miserable. Maybe one of you is holding on like hell, like Scientology does, but you want out. And when you get out, there's a relief, but there's still a level of sadness there, because most of us go into these things thinking that, it's going to last a long time, a lifetime, that it's going to be forever. So you kind of had this goal of what it was going to be. I think it's that way in Scientology. You have this goal and this idea of how it's going to be. And now you've put in all this time and money, and you're going to call it quits when you're so close. Because as soon as you start bringing up that you're having these thoughts of, I feel like I've reached the pinnacle, I don't know what else there is for me. Well, you're going to be interrogated, and they're going to find some stuff. Absolutely find some stuff. And I think being able to let go and be okay with the fact, or look at it even like I don't look at all my time growing up in Scientology as being a complete and utter waste, because I don't know who I'd be today, right? I would like to think that I'd be the person that I am today in an easier way, in a way that didn't involve a lot of those things. But I think most people, when you get to different points in your life where you feel, just pretty more content and like, you know what, I'm going to be okay, that you wouldn't have got there without certain challenges. So it's hard for me to say. And I think when they get to that point, I know that's what helped me a lot, is when I was like, okay, because that really bummed me out, even though I wanted to leave and I wanted out, and I got out, but there was still this such letdown of, I put so much time and money into this, and it's just a waste. And then I would look at it multiple times throughout the years and realize, what I know today and what I can do today is not because Scientology made me that way, good or bad. It's because that's who I am. And I chose to take from that experience some really good lessons, because it would be really hard to get me into a cult now. There's just things that, like anything in life, any struggles that you have, if it's addiction, if it's bad relationships, if you can learn something from it and take it, then it's not such a waste of time. And for me, it helped me let go of Scientology and let go of that cult culture. Is I had to be okay with, like, okay, I'm going to look at it as a lesson and not just complete and utter BS, which doesn't mean it's not. It is. But you can still even learn from BS. So it's not because of Scientology, it's in spite of it.
Totally. Anand says, I know someone named Faye who claimed past life Sea Org and even said who she was. No detailed memories, but people believed her. Yeah. Let's see. Freezy New Project. Interesting the way she describes it. When you're clear, you become a sociopath? Really? I forget how you described it.
I don't remember either.
A Scientologist would not agree with that characterization, but I guess you'd also have to get agreement on what exactly is meant by sociopath. Yeah, that's all right. James Patterson, AA run, my local cable channel carries a Scientology channel. So shameful. I have to assume, God, are you talking about DirecTV? No, DirecTV is not a cable channel. But if you have DirecTV, I think channel 320 is the Scientology TV channel. Janet, are you in the Tampa Bay area? Because I seem to recall that Scientology had started broadcasting on a local cable channel. So yeah, other than that, I haven't. I'm curious now what this is referring to.
Yeah.
From a poet, Brian Lucas, I heard a history professor say about past lives. If there are past lives, you are more than likely a farmer, a farmer, a farmer, a farmer, and oh yeah, a farmer.
Yeah.
Marilyn Honig says, I would say that I was Marilyn Monroe, but Serge said that everyone claimed that one too. Yeah. Cool Blue 64 question. Reincarnation. Is this why they have a billion-year contract? Yes,
Yeah.
actually. Why a billion years? Why not a million or less? There's no extra significance to the billion years. It's just a symbolic of the level of commitment to dedicate the rest of your existence to helping clear this planet and then other planets, basically.
That's right. I forgot about that you got to go on and clear other planets. I think a billion years is really, it's typical Scientology overblow of stuff, right?
Yes. The scrapbooker. I guess I don't understand how one can be a past life clear if Scientology has only been around since the 50s. I
Well,
hate to break it to you. Go ahead.
well, like in my situation, so this was years ago. I'm 53 now. So I was born in 1970. And the clearing course and things that were happening at St. Hill were happening earlier in the 60s. So the math worked out for them on that because you could have died at an early age and then you come back and then, from 1970 on. But this was happening in the 60s.
That's right.
Yeah. So you'd have to be a certain age.
Yeah. And, technically, in practice, this isn't true, but really you could go clear in within a year or two of being in Scientology, or even less, depending on how you're doing it, how much money you're paying, how much time you're spending getting auditing. So, scrapbooker, I was born in 1980. Dianetics had already been around for 30 years, and someone could go clear and then die the next day or whatever, like you said.
Yeah, and then you pick up a body and you do it all over again. I would see children doing the clear certainty rundown. In fact, I'm almost positive that's I could be totally wrong on this, but my recollection is that's what Elizabeth Moss was doing. She was there as a little girl when I was there as an older adult, and we were in the same. You know how in Scientology, when you do certain services, you do it in the same place. So it's safe to assume that other people there are doing what you're doing specifically.
Right. Yeah.
I think she was getting ready to do it.
That makes
sense. And she was a child.
Wow. LJ, Natalie, and Aaron, it can't be said enough from this never end, but thank you so much for educating the public about the cult of Scientology and human abuse and crimes. Our pleasure. Job Kremers, do you think David Miscavige is aware of the financial harm the church causes? Does he just not care? Also, what the heck is Tone 40? I think Miscavige knows the financial harm that the church causes. And I think on some level, that's kind of the point, is to extract as much money as possible. And it's not like Scientology only expects you to give what you're comfortable giving. They expect you to overextend yourself. That's what's expected.
Yeah, that's the bare minimum.
Yeah. So Tone 40 has a couple different definitions in Scientology. On its chart of emotions, it's basically the highest level of emotion. But it has more kind of a casual usage, which it really just means being so positive. What's the word I'm looking for?
Like there's no other intention. Your intention is like pure in the one going through.
I'm trying to use there's a non-Scientology phrase, which is like, manifesting. Yeah. Manifesting something, like imagining it and having complete certainty that what you're intending to have happen is going to happen. Yeah. Like the definition of Tone 40, again, in the dictionary, specifically speaking, there's a few different definitions, but that's only because the definitions aren't really definitions. They're just quotes from L. Ron Hubbard about what it means to be Tone 40. And it's basically a positive postulate. In Scientology, a postulate is you're intending something to happen and it's going to happen. And you don't even entertain the fact that this could ever not happen. You're so focused and so definitive. And it's almost like a state of mind where you're not self-doubting. You're not questioning whether you can accomplish something. And to even question whether you would accomplish it would mean you're not being Tone 40. So implied in Tone 40 is a complete lack of any counter thought.
Isn't it too serenity of beingness on the emotional tone scale? 40? Yeah. Is 40 serenity of beingness?
40 is serenity of beingness, but you're like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
So there you go, Job Kremers. I hope that helps a little bit. David Griggs, isn't it ironic how a Scientologist, Sky Dayton, started Earthlink that eventually revealed the secrets of the church that will lead to its destruction? So because Earthlink was an internet service provider, right? And then the internet is how the OT material leaked. But Earthlink wasn't like the first internet service provider, was it? But anyway, I
I
get
have
your
no
point.
idea.
I get your point. Proud SP from Quebec. Been watching for a few months. Thanks for the amazing content. Our pleasure. Matrix Tech Solutions. Good to see you. It's been a little while. Kathy Kamelmacher. Thank you very much. Chemist has a good question here. So is there such a thing as a human who has had no body thetans attached to them? What's your take on this?
I would say from a Scientology perspective, as I would have understood if I had that question when in Scientology, no. That it's just no, there wouldn't be in Scientology because one, then there'd be nothing to sell you. So you definitely got the body thetans. But it's also it's if the origin story of Scientology with Xenu and the volcanoes and all that, the way that they attach to humans. There's a lot too. If a lot of this is confusing, it's still confusing, even to Scientologists, because there's some things. I remember asking some questions when I was studying the operating thetan level 3 material about Xenu and body thetans that could not be answered. When in Scientology, when you're studying L. Hubbard and Scientology, there's a course supervisor, which is what Aaron was, where they're there in the course room to help you, but not explain anything to you. They're there to help you find your misunderstood word or to go make some things in clay to show that you understand it. But they don't actually explain to you. So you're left kind of basically, you ask a question and they say, what do your materials state? Assholes, just over and over again, not answer the question. You're supposed to find it within the materials. And I never saw anything that would indicate that there was a human who had no thetans that were attached to them. But I often wondered, well, wait a minute though, like how do they attach to you? Like, are they attaching to you physically because you get different bodies? So they are attached to you spiritually? Like there were so many questions and a lot of that just doesn't get addressed.
Right. Like, because those are some interesting questions. When you die, do your body thetans stick with the body that you've dropped? Or do the body thetans stick with you as a thetan? Or do the body thetans detach from the body when it dies and start blowing in the winds again? Like L. Ron Hubbard didn't really get into this kind of stuff, did he? We
No,
don't
because
think
then if
so.
you're born again, right, into a human body, do you have the same body thetans that you had before? Do you have more if they're being dropped in ice cubes into the ocean, into this, what L. Ron Hubbard called Earth a prison planet?
Well, none of the new thetans would be body thetans because none of the new thetans went through the volcano incident.
That's true. They'd be the ones that were already here, but there were in Scientology, he talks about implant stations where spirits could still be implanted with all of these false ideas and then sent back down to Earth.
Oh, so they could take a regular thetan and turn them into a body thetan?
I'm wondering. I mean, I don't know.
They could give them the same implants. They could give them incident 1 and incident 2, maybe in the implant station. Ooh,
And
I
then
never
trap
thought
them
of
that
one.
way.
Well, that's interesting. Because technically in Scientology, what you have is 2 different levels of thetans. You've got regular thetans like you and I, and then you've got the body thetans who are stuck to bodies. And my understanding has always been that in order to be a body thetan, you had to have gone through the volcano incident from
Oh, that
75
makes
million years
sense.
ago. But then where are all the new thetans coming from?
That's the thing. Where are they coming from? Because supposedly after Xenu was trapped in whatever mountain he's trapped in, wherever, that, I mean, was there peace after that? I mean, what happened? I want to know. I want to like see the sequel. What happened after that? We'll never know.
All right. Rusty says, clear certainty rundown. 1, you must realize that you originally created your own reactive mind. 2, you must have realized this while doing Dianetic auditing, not some other Scientology auditing. Yes, there is something about that. Like if you spit out the clear cognition, but you've never done any Dianetics auditing, they don't generally let you attest to clear unless you're saying it was past life clear, but they don't do that
Exactly.
anymore.
Yeah.
So, but then it's weird, right? Like what happens if you're spitting out the clear cognition, but you haven't had Dianetics auditing? That seems to be a little bit of a pickle.
Mhm.
That's why I really want to talk to someone who's done the CCRD auditor course and even the CCRD CS course. I'm not aware of there being a separate CS course, but there must have been. Yeah, crazy stuff, guys. Crazy stuff. This is the fun stuff, though.
Yeah, totally. Because we never get to talk about it.
I know.
We just never get to talk about it. And I'm the only one in my family that's still alive that did the upper levels in Scientology.
Mm.
Because my mom did, but she passed away. Grandpa dad did, and he, passed away back in the 80s.
We should do a chat with me, you, and Joey Chait. I've done a chat with Joey Chait about the OT levels. He did the OT levels as a young Scientologist. But it would be fun to have two people sort of bouncing their memories off of each other and see
Yeah,
who jogs what and what falls out.
that would help because that's part of why, at least in my situation, it's not something I've spent a lot of time trying to remember. And, my hard drive is full now. If I remember too much about my past Scientology procedures, I will forget the names of my grandchildren. So it's a balance. It's a balance. But being able to speak to someone freely who did the same thing, yeah, I think would help. Be like, oh, yeah, that's right. Because these are things I've not given thought to for years. I don't like sit around at night thinking like, oh, wonder if I got any more body thetans or body thetans real where, I'm too busy trying to figure out like alien life and is that a thing and that, all that stuff. I'm way more interested in that than the whole body thetans thing, but it would be an interesting conversation. I don't think I know who that is.
Yeah, I'll introduce you. You'll meet him soon. Guys, for anyone who has not yet subscribed to Natalie's channel, jump over and please do so. Scientology, Life After a Cult. She uploads every single day. This has been a lot of fun. Let's do something again soon, all right?
Absolutely.
Thanks for hanging out with us this evening, everyone. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, all that good stuff, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right